What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock, what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what you should be watching for tomorrow, given all the factors that will affect the economy, the stock market, and Tesla going forward. I'm also going to talk about what Jerome Powell is about to do and how this may affect Tesla, and everything you need to know for tomorrow for Tesla and the broader market. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. And not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla share, a free Apple share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 2 days. Check it out before they run out. The offer is almost over. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So anyways, looking at Tesla, this thing was down about 0.19% for the day on Friday, but that doesn't really matter that much because the market was only open for a couple of hours because Friday was the day after Thanksgiving. And now going into the markets, guys, we have some very interesting things coming out. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that Tesla does still have this inverse head and shoulders like formation. We got a nice push off of it, and there is potential for us to continue pushing a little bit higher, in my opinion. However, I'm not necessarily going to turn extremely bullish after that once you see what's coming out in this market. As far as Tesla goes, though, we did see a lot of shorting going on a couple of days ago, and many shorts did end up covering. That did end up causing Tesla to start pushing up a bit. However, once you see the resistance on the market, you will actually change your perspective on how much this thing can actually pump going forward. Tesla's green about 53% of the time on Mondays, so there is some potential for us to see green tomorrow. And Citigroup, of all things, is also coming out as pretty bullish. Looking at SPY and its options chain, you can see that we still have a relatively high puts to call ratio, but it's been like this over the last couple of weeks, and we've still seen the market continuing to pump. Now, correlation does not mean causation, and I don't necessarily believe that this is the only fact that's going to cause SPY to continue pushing. And eventually, I mean, if everyone keeps on buying puts again and again and again, yes, the market will likely hold up, but it can't just do that forever. I mean, reversals will eventually come. Now, when it comes to the markets, people are still pretty greedy, and this is part of the reason why the market is pumping. The bulls are becoming more comfortable. However, when it comes to the news that's coming out, there are some things that will affect that thesis. Unfortunately, guys, there are more and more of these lockdowns in China. They're getting extreme, and we are seeing massive protests going on. We also saw this happening outside of massive company headquarters, like for Apple, for big factories over there. It's very difficult, and seeing things like this happening is not really good for the USA's economy as well. It affects the output, it affects the production, it also affects the ties and geopolitical issues. And not to mention the fact that there are other issues going on simultaneously. I also want to note something else that's very important. We don't have too much really going on Monday. We do have a speech from the Fed's Williams. He's going to be talking at about 9 o'clock a.m., so about 2.5 hours after the market opens, at least for my time. Then after that, we also are seeing more and more Fed speakers. But by Wednesday, this is where things become serious. On, let me see, I believe it's going to be a little bit later during the day. We're going to see Jerome Powell speaking. So at about 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, Jerome Powell is going to be talking again. And remember, the last time he had one of these big events was at the Jackson Hole meeting, and he actually caused the market to drop pretty hard. And I want to really call this out because you have to remember, when the market's pushing up the way it is, I mean, it's good for us if you want to argue that, but the Fed does not like that. The Fed wants the market to start coming down as soon as possible. And they want this to happen because the quicker the market starts dropping, the less severe the landing is going to be in a way. Because if we are like starting to drop pretty hard, we're going to start pricing in more things. So bad news will not hurt the market as hard. But if the market is pumping very hard over the next few weeks, next few months, it's not going to be the best, because once the bad news comes from earnings, from some other catalyst, the market would crash very hard. And that's the reason why the Fed does not want it to be that bad. Now, as far as Tesla goes, I need to remind everyone that Tesla is still a very strong company fundamentally, believe it or not. Fundamentally, Tesla will take some hits, though, because of the earnings recession, but these things are out of Tesla's control. But if you ignore the external factors and look at the intrinsic value of this company based off production and the innovation coming from them, from the semis, I'm still very, very bullish. The first Tesla semi completed the first 500-mile trip with the full load. This is really showing big improvements, and more people are heavily invested to Tesla because of this, and more innovation is still yet to come. So I am still extremely bullish for the super long term. I even made a video about this previously. I believe Tesla is going to go to the thousands as many years pass by. That's for the super long term. But for the short term, what I'm seeing in the market is this. One quick issue is the fact that when you look at the VIX, we already filled the gap that was down here. There was a gap that formed many months ago, I think right here in September. We filled the gap right here. And you could see once the VIX enters this 20 to 19 territory, the VIX tends to see a lot of like volatility and a bit of a bounce once we enter that key demand zone. This means that the market could be getting ready for a big reversal relatively soon. And on top of that, when you look at SPY, one thing I'm not liking is the fact that yes, we do have room to continue pushing, but if you look at this setup, we have a tendency of getting rejected off this resistance zone and this descending broadening wedge. So from an EMA standpoint, yes, this thing actually broke many key resistance levels, and we do have potential to push up a bit more, in my opinion. But once we get to this like 407, 406 zone, I don't necessarily think it's going to be the best for the markets, in my opinion. We could see a big rejection or at least some sideways action. And there's a chance Jerome Powell could be the catalyst of that. I want you guys to be very careful on Wednesday when the guy starts talking, because the market likes to move like crazy. So be very, very careful. And it would work in his favor to cause the market to reverse by then. Now, does that mean we have to crash immediately? Does that mean we have to crash even during then? The answer is no. However, until then, I do believe there's some room for us to push up a little bit more before some big changes come. And that's because I do anticipate a big spike in volume on Monday compared to Friday. Remember, Friday had very low volume. The market was barely open. So I am seeing potential for SPY to continue holding these zones, maybe chopping a bit, but maybe touching the upper trend line, hitting that like 407, 406 zone. Very, very possible. We also have a gap over here on SPY. If this thing continues to break above that 403 zone, this thing could actually fly to about this 407 level around there. And that's where I'm going to be very careful on SPY. If SPY gets a big rejection and this thing starts coming down over the next couple of weeks, right? Tesla is likely going to follow it. And it's not just SPY, right? It's the whole market. It's going to be the QQQ also following this trend. As you can see on the QQQ, this thing, in my opinion, has some tough resistance coming up around that $300 level. Not to mention that 290 level is also pretty strong. But in my opinion, QQQ looks like it has a little bit more room than SPY to push up, which is a pretty decent sign for Tesla. But that doesn't change the fact that key resistance is coming. We have a supply zone coming up, and this thing will likely reverse as time goes on, unfortunately. As for Apple, I'm liking the overall setup a bit. I mean, it looks pretty sideways from here, but right now it looks pretty indecisive. Now, you could argue we have this gap here. We could just push up a little bit and maybe continue pumping to that 150 level. After that, guys, as you can see, resistance is getting stronger right here, and this thing is struggling to really hold these levels. So eventually, I do believe over the next few weeks, Apple could see a big reversal, which would thus bring down the QQQ. Now, how will all of these things affect Tesla? Seeing the dollar index continuing to push up just a little bit, it looks like it's going to base relatively soon around this 104 to 105 zone. I do believe this could come down a little bit before this thing sees a big push to the upside, which is going to cause the market to also come down. So when is this going to happen? A little bit later, but it does look like this thing is getting ready to kind of base around here before starting to push up. For Tesla, all this means is I do believe Tesla has room to push up a little bit more room, guys. We could see this thing hit the 190 level. And I don't really know exactly how high it's going to peak at. It could get stopped at like 190. If not, 200 flat is very possible. I know we have this gap around the low 193s. I mean, either way, wherever Tesla goes, I do anticipate some more upside. But then by the time we get to Tuesday, I expect a slowdown. And on Wednesday, things could go south pretty fast with Jerome Powell talking. So looking at this inverse head and shoulders formation, I want to see a nice bullish continuation. On the daily, looking at the EMAs, Tesla is still well below the 200 EMA, not even close to it. So being this oversold means Tesla has potential to continue pushing. We did see this pretty nice looking bullish setup that formed on Thursday after Tesla, not Thursday, Wednesday after Tesla got a nice bounce. So I want to see a nice continuation. I'm hoping for it to continue just a bit more. And until then, guys, I'd still be very careful in that 190 to 200 zone. Be very careful if you are a Tesla investor, because I do expect Tesla to trade kind of sideways around there. Then after that's where things could really change depending on what Jerome Powell says. So, anyways, for tomorrow, what do I think is going to happen? Well, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Nobody truly knows exactly what's going to happen in the future based off like announcements and news. But I can tell you, I think it's very likely, based on previous price action, Tesla has a tendency of, let me see this right here. We have a tendency of seeing a nice push after like the first 30 minutes up until like the second hour. Then we start to slow down as the day goes on. And then once we approach power hour within the last like hour and a half, that's when Tesla starts pumping a little bit more. So I'm anticipating that Tesla's going to get a nice push into open, just a small one. And as time goes on, this thing might continue to push, and hopefully we see 186. Now, if 186 is touched, remember we have very or like pretty significant resistance right there. If this thing breaks 186, I wouldn't be surprised if we hit 190. That's another resistance level. You could argue that there is a supply zone around it. I don't think it's that significant. And if we do break above the 190s, I'm pretty sure this thing is going to go for the gap fill and hit that 194 level. So I like to trade by levels. It does actually work pretty well once you understand supply and demand zones. But another thing that's important is, once we fill the gap all the way up here, if we do break 190, I'm going to be very, very careful, because a big amount of sideways action can start to perpetuate. And after that, we could see a big reversal. So my target on Tesla, a very bullish target, would be seeing this thing reaching that 193 level. And if it continues to break, I mean, 200 is also very possible. But like I said before, guys, this thing could turn sideways pretty quickly by Tuesday, because of the fact that the market is going to be getting ready for Jerome Powell. So be very, very careful on Wednesday when Powell comes up. So for tomorrow, I'm hoping for a nice push into open. I want to see like 190 within the first 2 hours. And if we manage to break it, we could go for the gap pull around that 194 level. We could get a rejection off there and kind of trade sideways between 194 to 190 for some time. And if anything, I mean, you have to watch all these support and resistance levels, because previous resistance becomes support once we break above it and hold above it. So watch it very carefully. But that's essentially what I'm predicting, guys. A nice push to the upside, a pretty green day. I don't think it's going to be like extremely green, like another 10% day or 8% day. But I do believe Tesla could see at least 190 for tomorrow, and that's what I'm hoping for. And like I said before, guys, be very careful in this market. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for listening. Please have a great rest of the day. I also apologize about recording this video a little bit later than usual, because I was out for Thanksgiving weekend. It was definitely an amazing weekend, guys. I hope you all had a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next one tomorrow. Tesla to the moon, because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.